Hello, hello, and welcome. I'm Sheila Balgobin, known as the Dream Decipherer, and this is Dream Your Life, Live Your Dream Live, where we talk about all things dreams. Now, today I have a special guest with me, and his name is Christian Elliott, and he is a guide with people to help people with their health. I mean, at all levels, not just focusing on one aspect of health, but looking at health in a holistic way. So we're going to learn a little bit about Christian. He's going to tell us a little bit about his journey. And we're going to be looking at today finding the roots of illness, at whatever level they're occurring, whether it be emotional, physical, mental, spiritual, etc. And looking at what was how that became part of Christian's journey, and tips at the end that can help you perhaps integrate better the various cells that compose you. So, Christian, I'm going to leave the floor to you. Thank you for joining me this morning. And just tell us a little bit about you and your journey towards health.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be with you, and I'd be happy to do so. Yeah. My story of getting into health is probably like a lot of people. It became a need personally of something I needed to look into. And so that for me stuck more as a profession. I didn't even see myself getting into health as my career, but here I am 20 years later, more than that now, I guess. And I'm still talking about it and still discovering new ways to help people heal and really over the years, when you figure out and solve one problem, what you quickly identify is the next one and the next obstacle. And that's just kind of an iterative process of realizing this thing called humans are complex and we get messy and there are interrelated ways as to why we break down. And so my foray into health really was on the physical realm. It was just degenerative joint condition, a shoulder that had been bugging me for about 2 years and wasn't getting better. And I'd been to about a half dozen medical doctors with really no success. I got some anti-inflammatories and different symptoms that went with that. And then they told me I was probably too young for cortisone or surgery and it's tough it out. So I ended up finding a chiropractor of all people who really turned my paradigm of health upside down. He taught me about nutrition. He taught me about the medical industrial complex, the food industrial complex. And so between that and an immune system that just was not functioning, I got sick so easily, probably 4 times a year. I was laid up for a couple of weeks with just an
Oh,
unreasonable amount of symptoms. And so short version, after a couple of years of learning and studying under him, I really got my feet under me. And when you start, like I just graduated, interestingly, from seminary. So I had this theological background. And I'm moving into what I think are going to be my ministry years. And really, health became my ministry. It was an interesting blend of different aspects of wellness coming together right from the get-go. And then over the years, so fast forward, my wife and I had brick and mortar locations for about 9 years. So we ran wellness facilities and we hired chiropractors and acupuncturists, massage therapists, personal trainers, nutritionists, kind of you name it. And the major disciplines in the alternative world, we had those and integrated them. So I saw a lot in those 9 years of what a breadth of a team can do for people. And then on top of that, recognizing that there's this predictable thing called emotions that people have. And there's this excuse loops that we get in, or these fears and these unreasonable, irrational roadblocks, and we become our own bottleneck to health. And so it really forced me into a fascinated look at the human condition and what is it that is predictable about why we get sick. And so often, what I've found in a simple version of where I am today is it really, like you said, it's at the intersection of mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. I don't try to separate them anymore. I recognize that we can be poisoning ourselves, not just chemically or nutritionally, but we can be poisoning ourselves mentally and emotionally. And toxic
absolutely.
thinking can wreck our health as much as anything. So now I just work as a health coach just at virtually. And I work with other doctors and coaches, and we just integrate plans to help people really discern what are the roots of this illness. And rather than playing biochemical whack-a-mole, we go after the roots of it and we try to figure out how do we empower the body to function? How do we unburden it so that it's not bogged down by chemical or mental toxicity or any number of other things? So that's a very quick version of 20 plus years of thinking about health.
Well, it's a. I think what the expression "who feels it knows it" comes to mind here. That it's
Hmm.
when we reach crisis point and the doctors have no answers. I mean, I was thinking while you were reciting that your story that a client that I had in London, actually, that was giving delivering complementary therapies in a homeless facility for men.
Hmm.
And this gentleman had had a business. He injured himself, and his shoulder was bad. And the doctor's solution to his ongoing shoulder pain, we can amputate your arm. I was,
Oh my gosh. Right. Great
I,
idea. Never
yeah.
mind phantom pain.
I couldn't believe it. I mean, and even the guy said, "Yeah, I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd be furious, furious." I was
Right.
incandescent. I couldn't believe anybody would say something like that. And all I would do, half an hour of passive stretches, and his arm
Right.
was fine. It had full strength. He could grasp things and hold them. I just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Not surprised. Yeah. No, the medical world is so arrogant sometimes or so blind to
Yeah,
healing. They're stuck in a treatment paradigm
yeah.
and they don't have any clue how the body heals itself.
No. And what I think is funny is that they're just starting to catch up to ancient systems of healing, like in Chinese medicine or Ayurveda from India, traditional healing around the world.
Yeah.
That, it's not about what it is or why
Hmm.
it is, it's does it work? And
Yeah.
empirical evidence, even Einstein said, is evidence.
Yeah.
you
Eh,
know?
yeah. You get
So
enough anecdotes together and it's really evidence. It's not anecdotal anymore.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, and this is exactly the problem. And you touched on another thing and talking about that mind body split. And I think we talked about this when we were kind of getting to know each other, that
Hmm.
this mind body split where mental health and physical health have nothing to do with each other came about in the Middle Ages. Now, back in
Hmm.
the Middle Ages, the church ruled, the church rocked. And so whatever they said went. And if you wanted to save your soul and you were an artist, you could do, if you could dissect the body, that was okay. That's what Michelangelo did, but you can't touch the soul. And the soul was thought to dwell here in the head, more or less,
Hmm.
and in the heart.
Yeah.
So, that's where the split came from. And to this day, we treat mental health as being separate from physical health. And how is that possible? I ask you. Are we headless horsemen?
No, not even close. And when you fast forward that to the early 1900s and just weaponize it even more, you've got monopolistic, ruthless, Machiavellian Western medicine that basically it's chemistry centric and it's all about patentable things that we can put into the body that tinker with its physiology. And anything else is now unconventional, unscientific, is to be dismissed and not just dismissed, but fought against aggressively, such
Yes.
that the only thing we're left with is this chemistry model of health, which doesn't begin to encompass healing or the human experience or so many other aspects of who we are. And it's where I think, to your point, we're starting to recognize that we've been under this spell for a long time, and it's time to look more broadly at what does it really take to heal. And so that
Mm-hmm.
once you kind of the trance fades away, I'm like a kid in a candy store now. There's so many aspects of wellness and so many ways to get someone well that it's been
Absolutely.
more of a fun puzzle the last several years.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I call it being a bit of an alchemist because as a therapist, I would have different tools in my toolbox.
Hmm.
Sometimes people needed to work with color, so you use color therapy. Sometimes it was sound, doing sound healing. Sometimes it was learning to do self healing and teaching them Reiki so that they could work on healing themselves. So I mean, the mixture of treatment modalities, I think, is actually beneficial for everyone involved because everybody is different, and what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another. So I'm with you on that one. It's like being a kid in a candy store. Ooh, what can I do with this person?
Yeah.
How can I help elicit, a shift so that they're able to affect their healing? Because I don't never, don't like to call myself a healer. I don't heal anybody. People heal themselves. I
Hmm.
facilitate that work, but I don't do it
Sure.
for them. Nobody can do it for them. It's a choice.
Right. Yeah. I think of myself as a teacher, not a healer.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. So, okay, we've kind of set out the story about what the focus of allopathic medicine, what passes for medicine in most of in the Western world. Now, I would like to kind of look at ways that maybe looking east or looking south, even looking at other ways, other perspectives at looking at the body, the
Hmm.
mind, and even our spirit. Is
Hmm.
with because we're not these one faceted beings. We have various aspects, various selves that
Hmm.
at various levels that need to be attended to. But we'll start body, mind, and spirit. That there's subtle bodies, but we'll start with the grosser ones and look at ways to be able to address some of those issues that come up at those levels. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Well, okay. Well, if
no,
you want to start with the physical.
yeah, start with the
Yeah.
body.
Okay. Well, on the physical realm, the easiest, most reasonable explanation for the glaringly, dramatically ugly health statistics that we have. 6 out of 10 people today have a chronic health condition. 42% of us are over or obese. That doesn't even count. If it's overweight, it's about a third of us. Like just
Mm,
go to the airport, go to the mall, go to the beach, and see how many fit people you find. There's not many.
mm,
And that has to be coming from somewhere. So there's a dramatic increase. I found a picture of different hotels of like the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Nobody's overweight. What happened in the last 4 decades that has dramatically shifted? Well, one of the things that we can visibly see in our bodies is toxicity.
mm.
And that's just there's 80,000 synthetic chemicals that are new to nature that have been made in the last 100 plus years. And they don't have to be proven safe. They have to be proven unsafe, which is a really hard thing to do. So they kind of get a free
Until it's
pass.
too late.
Right. And then even things that are banned decades later, we can still find them in our environment. So there's challenges that we have to honestly look at in we were lied to that we would have better living through chemistry. And that has poisoned and burdened our bodies. And it has not just poisoned us, but it has rebalanced it's shifted the microbiome. It has reshifted the microbial colonies that we interact with that should live in us and have a symbiotic relationship that's flourishing. And it's unbalanced them to such a degree that we can have bacterial and parasitic infections and other yeast and such that are highly problematic and toxic. And these things that should eat our food and poop nutrients now eat our food and poop toxins, and they're poisoning us on the regular.
Yeah.
And having some strategy to deal with that on the physical is one of the roots of illness and often the biggest. And sometimes that's not even the biggest. And we have to start looking at other lanes in order to figure out how to get somebody well. So I can talk about them at length as well. But on the physical, that's what I've identified as the easiest, most obvious thing to fix.
Mhm.
And if you just empower the body's purging systems, right? If you're an underslept, undernourished couch potato who doesn't drink water, we've got a problem. The exits aren't open. We can't get anything out of you.
Yes.
And so on the physical realm, we have to be able to address that first.
Well, I mean, it's something that's while you were talking about that is that something that scientists have been talking about for years, but no one talks about is the degradation of the soil. Healthy
Right.
soil
Yes.
breeds healthy food. The
Hmm.
worst culprits for degradation of soil is the US, which I think is like 70, 80% is degraded soil, and Australia, which is like 60, 70%. Other countries
Hmm.
around in Europe and other continents and whatnot have higher levels. Some, well, others have lower. I mean, but among the highest is the US and Australia. And
Yeah.
that's all down to intensive farming, which is unhealthy for the animals as well as for people. There's all kinds of overuse of the soil. There's not putting nutrients back into it. I mean, in years gone by, they used to do rotation of crops
Right. Yeah.
to not only to feed the plants, but also to put back nutrients into the soil. They don't do that.
Right.
It's just constant,
No.
constant, constant. So the soil just wears out.
Yeah.
So there's many things we've thought that's wrong with the food chain. And like you said, we
Yeah.
could go on forever about
Right.
the issues. But I mean, that's the principal thing. That's it's what's the soil, the quality of the soil, as well as the quality of the food, and what's
Hmm.
in the food chain with regard to feeding, the soil and the animals and etc.